Hello friends, today I'm going to show you an example of .NET Core application using JWT token authentication, and we would log into the application using an ID password from the database and fetch the results from the database. Post will log in using a get data option. So what we are doing here, we use .NET Core 6, and this is a new API project. The first thing that we did here is we did one API project. I'll tell you which one. Yeah, this one, the ASP.NET Core Web API, this one. And then we added another project for the front end that was an ASP.NET Core Web App Model View Controller, this one. Okay. So once you have this .NET Core Web API, it will bring you into a solution where you will have um, no controllers, no models, no data, just an application with few program.cs, the default application. And then I added all these three folders. That's the controllers, the data, and the model. And then added an auth controller into it. And data is having my application DB context or the entities, you can say. And in the model class, I have two table types models. Okay. So in the app settings.json, first of all, you need to configure your connection string from here. So this is my connection string. It's connecting to my local database, which is here, my SQL database, and then I'm using this table that is the user TBL, and it has only two data in it, a username and a password, and then I'm trying to fetch those data post login into another page which says that it's a get data list, and that's a button. All right. So what all things we need? Once we have our API ready, that is one application, and the front end too, it's another application. So how do we do that? We right click on the solution and then add new project. From this new project, I selected the ASP.NET MVC. Sorry, wait, the ASP.NET Core MVC, and then that gave me an access to the front end. This one, the ASP.NET Core Web App MVC, and that was the front end application which was added later. So in this API, I added all those um, NuGet packages. So what are the NuGet packages? If you right click, if you click on the solution on the project, it will show you all the NuGets that were added. So the .NET Framework Code, the diagnostics.entity framework code, authentication.jwt bearer, the SQL server, the framework core.tools, and web.code generation. So I can create, yeah, generate some codes. Uh, this web.code generation that was required for the view, actually the front end. Yeah, the front end part, this one required the web code generation because I had to generate the view. But in the API, you normally don't need this code generation. By mistake, I had added those things, but yeah. So moving on to our application. In the application DB context, you can have a look at this text here. So this is created by me. So application DB context, which is inheriting the DB context, and those DB set. These are the tables that I am using. Okay, so the class file I have created for one of them. The other one is not used in this program. So these are the column names of your table that I have in my SQL server. Now, in the auth controller, what do we have? This is an API controller. How do you do that? Well, I added another folder that is the controllers, named it controllers, and added a controller item into it. And then this is by default. I selected the API controller from it, and then I have this two dependency injection in it, the configuration and the application DB context here. So I'll share this code on my GitHub repository, so you will get all this code there. Now, what are we doing for the JWT token? Well, the first thing you did was you added the NuGet package for that one, which is ASP.NET Core Authentication JWT bearer, and the latest version of your application. So whatever application version you are using, it's the latest of that one. So I used 6.0. Now 6.0.35 was the latest one that we added here. After we added this one, so these are the code that we followed here. I have this login post method, which will use a model type as the parameter, that is the username and the password. After you get this ID and password, we will check. I have another method which is authenticate user, and that is also using the same model class as the parameter, and this is going to check if I have this ID and password valid in my application. If I have it's null, then it will print something to the console application. The console application is by default run when you start the application. So these are the console application when you launch the application. Okay. Now, if it found the user, then it will return the user. Okay. Whatever is there in the user, it's just returning that one. Okay. The second action method is the generate JWT token. This is also accessing the same user table. That's the same model class as the parameter. And then I have this variable key, which is using this set of statements, the symmetric security key encoding ASCII.get bytes. And it's following this configuration with JWT config. By default, this config object is calling my app settings. Okay. This configuration or iConfiguration config, it's calling my app settings where I have the settings for the JWT. Now you can see in this JWT section, I have one key and the issuer, the audience, the duration or the minutes, how long this API or this token should exist. Okay, we need to configure these things again in the program.cs of your API. So this is my program.cs for the API. If you see these things would not be there, so you just need to notice down here what all things we are using. The data section, we are using the bearer section, we are using entity framework core, and then identity model.tokens. Okay, now this key should match the same you have in your app settings.json. Okay, so we are using the key there and we are also using the same key here, both ways. Okay. Now I'm sorry. This key was to be used somewhere in this in this program.cs, but I did not use. So you may remove that one. It's if I comment this one out, also it will probably not throw me an error. No, because I haven't used this key anywhere. So it was supposed to be used here instead of the JWT key. I could have called it here, but we don't need this one because it's already there. All right, so leave this one. Now, in the services.add authentication option.default authentication scheme, I have the JWT bearer defaults.authentication scheme. In the default challenge scheme, also the same thing. Now, I have .add JWT bearer option. Okay, you need to add this section as well. So validate user is true, audience is true, lifetime is true, and the issuer. This is also fetching from the configuration, which means the app settings.json. It's trying to fetch the issuer from there, the audience from there, and the key from there as well. Okay. Now, after putting on this section, we will move on to the add course. This one is required when you try to access an external application. So this one will be required to give access to my front end application. So the front end application that we have in my application needs this add course allowed on the program.cs. If you do not have this, it will not grant access to your front end application. Okay, unless this is a .NET Core application for your front end. You need course, for example, you need a front end application in case of React or an Angular. You need to provide the access to course. Okay, if course application is mentioned, then it will get access, otherwise it will not. Now, this localhost.5036, this is the IP address for my front-end application. So when my front-end application runs, it's giving it access on this port. Other than that, it will not grant access to anyone else. So I have access from the front-end to the API using this URL. Post that, we will have all these statements for builder.service. The few of them are default and few of them we have added. The connection string is mentioned in the program.cs here. And then we will also use the course here in the last statement, and finally the app.run. So this is all about the program.cs, as you can see. And the settings, app settings.json, I already showed you that it has 3 sections in it. The JWT, the logging, and the allowed host, the connection string. Okay, now these are the 2 files. The second one is the auth controller. I already showed you that we have 2 methods in it. One is the login and then authenticate user. The third one is the generate JWT token, which is generating the JWT for me. I need to remove this column, this comments. I don't need this one. Okay, so this much is what I'm using. So this one will generate the JWT token, and it will also pass on the information that I have. Or if I want something else other than the username, so I can pass these parameters using this objects. Okay, so I'm also passing the username and the email, and then a JWT token information with a GUID. Okay, GUID. Now we will see this in action. The second action methods I use for another application. We don't need these things, so you may remove this one, these 3. won't be required for you. And the final thing is the authorize USDBL. Okay, so this one will fetch all the data from my US user table when I try to get the data post logging in, and this will give return. It will give me all the data from that table. Okay, so let's save this application and run it. Yes, in order to run this application, as we have added two applications into the same solution, we need to configure this one in configure startup projects. In configure startup projects, you need to select multiple startup projects, and from there you select the front end as start without debugging, and the second one just a start, because if you want to debug you can do that, otherwise you can just mention that start without debugging. So you need to select each project how you want to run them up. Okay, so I have two projects and I'm selecting both of them to start up at the same time. Now pressing an OK, and we will start the application. We will see that both of them will run together, one in a different port, another one in another port. So the API in one port and the front end in a different port. Okay, so as I said, the front end needs access inside the course. That's what we supplied in the program.cs, and so it's going to grant access only to that application in your API. All right, so it's still launching. While we launch, we will it's launch. It will show up that two application has been launched. One is showing the front end with the default home page, and the other one is the Swashbuckle or the Swagger API. We don't have to do anything in the Swagger, just let it remain open, because that's your API which needs access and it needs to be running when you try to access that. And the front end will come up like this. That's the default page. I will increase the font. Now we will go to the login page. So home login is, oh wait, this is the Swagger. The API just began. It came up showing up the API. Okay, so these are the action methods that I have in the API. Now the front end will go to the login screen, which has a username and a password, and I will provide the username and password which I have in my database. Okay, so let's say I have you, John, and let's try with a wrong password. Okay, anything, and then I try to log in. What is it doing? It didn't do anything. Let's see. Login failed. Okay, it took some time, but then it came up with this, that the login failed. Check your credentials. So this is coming up from my API. Okay, this response is coming from the API that your login did not go through because you provided a wrong credential information. Now, if I do this with the correct information, what will we get? Let's clear the console part. This one failed, authorized, unauthorized. Okay, let's clear this. Sources is good. In the network tab, we will also see what we get here. Okay, so now we will provide the correct information. So ABC 1 2 3 4 with the sources. I will put some breakpoints for you so that you can find how it's fetching the data from there. Okay, so let's log in and see. Okay, so it has gone there, and you can see that it's getting something from the response. Yep, we got the token here. Now you can see that the token has been received from our backend application, which has generated this token, and it will store uh, on my browser. So this is local storage. Okay, this token will be stored in the local storage unless I destroy that, and this one will give me access to the database. Okay, so if I go further, that's going to grant me access. It showed a message that login is successful, and it will move on to the next page, which is the dashboard, and it's giving me two buttons with a get data and a logout. So now let's try to get the data that we have from the database. Okay, while we are here, let's check the network tab and see that if we have a token over there. You see this connection. Wait. I'll show you. In the header section, you should have the token somewhere. Oh, sorry, it's not here. The token was, while we logged in, it was there. So if I try to get the data, again, it's trying to fetch the API auth table. Now moving ahead, it reached our action method, the API's action method. So I will just go through and continue. You can see that it has hit our get method in the backend in the API section, and it's going to fetch the data from database and show us back. Okay, so when we are here again, we got a response, and the token is still valid. You see, the token is still valid there. If we go to the network section, let me see if it's showing the token somewhere. Yeah, you can see this in the network section. You can see in this US table, the beer token is still there. Okay, it's still here, right? So if we go further, that's going to give us the data. Now, if I close this, you can see that my data is fetched here inside a div. If you want to put it in a table, you can go ahead. I could have done that, but that would take the video length to a long time. So I just printed that inside the div, and it's showing me a JSON data from our API or from the table. It's getting this data. All right. Now, if you have to do the same thing in your Postman, how would you do that? Well, from fetching this thing on your Postman, you can do by using the bearer option. Okay, I probably don't have Postman set up. I have Postman, but it may not have. Let me see. How long does it take? So this is our Postman window, and here you can see that I have opened a new um, what is this? Is a new instance, and we are sending the URL that we should be fetching from the API. And how we test this thing using the bearer token. So see, when you are doing this bearer token thing or the JWT authentication, you need to select this authorization, and from the auth type we select bearer token, and this token is the one that you get in response from the login. So how do we receive that? When we are looking at this browser, you see this here. Now, when I see this, I have a breakpoint on my program, so that gives a response that has the token thing here. And we copied this token from here, Control C. We pasted it in the token option from the bearer token, Control V. And then we removed the quotes from there. After we remove this, we just send the request. It's a GET request, as you can see on my program. It's a GET request here. And USTBL is the action method that should be hit. Once we send this request, it's going to fetch the data from there, and you can see that it's working. Okay, let's do a small change and see if that's really working or not. Let's make some changes in the token, okay, and see what happens. See, 401 unauthorized. Now, if you make a change in this token, it's not going to give you the response. So you're not going to get your results. All right. So it has to be the correct token thing if you want to see the response and the exact result intended. All right. So I guess I have covered pretty much all about it from the JWT token thing. We fetched it from the website. We fetched it from Postman. Well, pretty much all about this from this video, and we will have a couple of more videos coming in. Until then, stay tuned, stay connected, and happy coding. Thank you.